everybody, welcome to the HooperCast. I'm Connor.
I'm not. My name's Dustin.
Hi, Dustin.
Hi, Connor.
So a bunch of stuff has changed since the last episode. There's a myriad of places you might be listening to us right now, which is good because that's what we wanted. You might be listening on iTunes. You might be listening on Podbean. You could be listening on Facebook or, well, not Facebook, but via Facebook, but on Blogger or Tumblr or YouTube.
What?
Oh, yeah. So we have spread our net out, and we're catching some fishes.
A whole bunch of fishes. Y'all's is our fishes.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, if you're a new listener, then welcome to the HooperCast. Please don't run away. We simply just talk about movies, TV, pop culture related to two of those things. Yeah, that's pretty much the simple premise of our show.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll get right into it. Don't want to waste your time right now. But we are wasting your time because what could you be doing right now instead of listening to us? Laundry, cure for cancer.
I mean, both are equally important.
Mm-hmm. So today we are going to talk about the Daredevil series on Netflix. We do realize we're a tad late talking about this. I mean, it's May 12th right now as we record this, so that it was almost a month to the date.
Yeah,
it was released. As I said in the last episode, though, we've been busy, and so it kind of got pushed back due to other things. But so if you have not seen this show yet, then go watch it. It's on Netflix. It's about 13 episodes, and the whole first season's right there. So it's actually better if you have watched it to listen to this episode because Dustin
we're
and I
going to spoil some stuff.
Yeah, we're going to talk about stuff that happens, and so if you haven't seen it, I'm flattered that you waited for us to talk about it first. However, I need you to go listen to it so you can keep up. So anyway,
exactly.
That's everything on the front end of this episode. So, but Dustin,
yes,
what did you think of this show? Because we weren't sure how this was going to turn out. A lot of people weren't sure based on how the movie went. But some people, like myself, I'll speak for myself, were a little optimistic, knowing that they were going to go in kind of a different tonal direction, or more of the direction they should go.
Sure.
So I don't know. How do you think they did?
I think they everything they set out to achieve, they achieved. I think they crafted an interesting show with its own voice, separate from the rest of the MCU. It's a show which takes its source material seriously and treats it with filmmaking integrity and artistic prowess. And it's a show that that certainly uses the cinematic language very well. As opposed to a lot of network television stuff. I mean, if you compare this to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I've only seen, very briefly, the filmmaking language is very different between the two shows. One is network television style, let's just get an over-the-shoulder shot, and, that's a good composition done.
Let's hurry up and go.
Exactly. And this takes its time and treats its 13 episodes as mini movies. So you'll see a plethora. I'm using all the big words today for our new listeners.
Yeah, did you read a book or something before this?
I have a calendar that has words on it that says use these, and I haven't used any of them, so I'm just piling all of them into this vast cornucopia of a sentence.
You're making me feel intellectually intimidated, Dustin.
I'm sorry that I've done this to you.
See, you're using a lot of words I don't understand, so automatically I'm gonna take them as disrespect.
All right. Well, okay. I'll change it. Sometimes in this show, the camera does good stuff, and other times it does better stuff than shows like Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I'm told is more of a layman's kind of approach to the filmmaking.
Bring back the smart, Dustin.
Okay. I realize the accent's not actually all that different. I just maybe like pitch it up a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it's not.
But no, it's a show that takes itself seriously and its source material seriously and treats it with respect and does not dumb itself down for its audience. So,
yeah, I really responded well to relative realism that they wanted to portray in this show, and like you said, the artistic integrity they wanted to give it. You know, they wanted it to be more than just another show about a comic book character. They wanted it to have some good shot design, and you know me, I appreciate when people curse when they would in normal life. I appreciate that there's a fair amount of people saying the word shit in this show. People getting called dickhead. I like that. I very much appreciate that. I was telling John, however, I am glad they didn't go all the way and just start throwing the F word around.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that would have been a little excessive. Like,
sure,
you know, treat it like an FX show, basically. I mean, it's plenty gory too. I mean, there's one episode where he gets super cut up.
He does.
And
there's a decapitation.
Yeah. Oh my God. There's decapitation. There's a guy that gets a spike through his head. I mean, it's some gory stuff, and they don't really have any strings on them when it comes to.
Is that an Ultron reference?
That is an Ultron reference.
I got it.
But I appreciate that they don't have that kind of holding them back. You know, there's no standards and practices other than, all right, well, what kind of show do we want to be versus what kind of show is the network forcing us to be?
Sure.
I think that gives them a lot of freedom, and it also makes the show the kind of show that people want to watch. And I'll tell you, I mean, we'll save this for the future talk for the end of the episode. But personally, I want them, and other people want them to introduce the Punisher into this Marvel TV Netflix universe, because that's the kind of stuff that people wanted out of that character too.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of Charlie Cox? What do you think of the actor playing Matt Murdock?
Well, I kind of felt like he was kind of a weak link of the show. I know I'm going to be kind of alone in this probably, but I think overall he did his job, but didn't really do much more than an adequate job. I felt like he said his lines and he said them, you know, he took direction well, but he didn't really infuse it with anything that felt like it was his own. There's no real personality to his performance. I didn't think, and it just seemed very kind of boring. And I think that for me, one of the weak links of the show is the Matt Murdock character, and I've kind of felt that way about Daredevil through the ages. So maybe that's just me not being able to really respond to him as a character. But Charlie Cox didn't do anything that put that over the edge for me. So I wasn't super impressed with his performance.
Yeah, to me it was just sort of I didn't notice it that much.
It was serviceable.
So that's like a good and a bad thing, right? I mean, it's like it's not so bad as to distract me from the show.
Sure.
But it's also, you know, the thing that I figured was the best part of the show we've already talked about, which is the creative vision.
Exactly, yeah.
Not the actors or...
I agree with you. I think if we just stick with the Marvel world, I mean, compare his performance as Murdock or as Daredevil to a Chris Evans or a Hemsworth or a Downey Jr. Those people have not only a passion for the character they're playing that you can see on screen, but they also have a charm, a likability, and like
this larger than life kind of quality to them.
Yeah, exactly. And Charlie Cox doesn't have that. I don't think that's a fault of the writing. I think that's a fault of his own. It may be that they asked him to play it more subtly than perhaps we're used to in the Marvel universe, but I just felt like if you stood him next to those Avengers heroes, he would come across sort of as a first Avengers Jeremy Renner, right? He's just kind of there. He's not really doing anything above and beyond to make you care for his character in the way that someone like a Chris Evans might. So I really have to, you know, just say he did okay.
Here's something else about his voice. He's a Brit. I've noticed with actors from Australia or England, when they do an American accent, I'm going to put two Charlies, Charlie Cox, Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy. Okay. I've noticed that when you put Brits in a TV show as an American, they tend to have to just growl or monotone their lines in order to maintain this accent. And I think that's kind of sad because you've got someone who, if you listen to him in interviews, he's like, "I was great fun playing Daredevil. It was great fun. He's a great character, and he's all like, you know, he's got inflection in his voice and he's excitement." But when he talks in this show, he's "Hey, Foggy, we can't get those reports out because they're going to go after Karen. And if they go after Karen, then the whole case is out the window." And it's like, yo.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's like...
That's one of my main problems.
I have to like really listen hard sometimes to hear what you're saying. I would prefer Charlie Hunnam because at least you've been like, "I'm Daredevil and I'm going down the street to stop someone from stealing purses. Ignore my accent that's trying to push through my lips because I'm running down the street. I'm gonna stop him because I'm from New York." And it's that's like, true. I'd prefer that at least because at least show me you're trying.
At least there's some inflection.
You know me, I'm in my propensity for people's voices or their accents. It's like his was fairly unnoticeable in terms of being from a different country. But I wonder if that had anything to do with how restrained his vocal performance was.
Well, yeah, no, I think you have a fair point there. What did you think about some of the other major cast? I mean, were you blown away by anybody in particular, or?
I want to start with the good people. I want to say Vincent D'Onofrio for last.
Oh man, okay,
yeah. All right,
right out of the gate.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
One of the highlights of the show for me is Rosario Dawson, actually, who's not in the series very much, but from what I read about her character, she's like, I can't remember her name, but she's some character in the comics who's like this nurse for a bunch of the Marvel people. Like she's kind of always there patching them up. So a lot of people think that she's going to be the link between all these Defenders shows because that character used to be married to Luke Cage, so that's going to be the link to that show probably, and like I said, across all the Defenders.
Gotcha.
So she wasn't in it very much, and I sort of wondered at that point, like, why'd you sign on for this? And now I kind of know it's one of those "don't worry, it gets bigger later" things.
Yeah.
I like Rosario Dawson because I like looking at her, I like listening to her talk, and I think she's a great actress. And I think she has screen presence and range as an actress, and so I'm always interested when she's involved because I like her so much. I guess as for Foggy and Karen, I can't remember the actors' names.
Deborah Ann Woll plays Karen, and Elden Henson plays Foggy Nelson.
And I feel like I've seen Elden Henson in a bunch of other stuff, so I recognized him. He was very Jack Blackish at the beginning of the show, and I thought, please don't keep this up because I don't like it. I don't like Jack Black, and I don't like people trying to be Jack Black.
Right.
But of course, as the show got more serious, he kind of displayed more depth as a character. So that was kind of a relief because I thought that was going to be way worse. Although he's still not. There's still something about him I'm not quite. I don't know what it is. Like he's serviceable and more than I thought he'd be at the outset. Whereas Charlie Cox is exactly what you see in episode 1.
I may disagree with you on Foggy a little bit.
Okay.
I feel like Foggy. I feel like Elden Henson's comfort zone, the area that he's best at, is certainly these. For me, the areas where he was playing comedic relief or just kind of the goofy kind of guy, some of his best scenes, and Charlie Cox's, to me, were the scenes where they were in college and just kind of joking around.
Yeah, those were good.
And where they kind of show themselves to be friends and friendly towards one another, because you get Charlie Cox to laugh a couple times and Elden gets to be goofy. But I felt like in his dramatic scenes, it's not that he was bad or he was doing anything wrong or that he wasn't even believable. I just felt like perhaps that guy is better suited to comedy than to drama. And so for that reason, I feel like I'm on the opposite where his comedic kind of scenes were the ones that stuck out, and the dramatic scenes, which, to be fair, he tended to share with either Deborah Ann Woll or somebody else. I felt like he just kind of disappeared in those. He was believable, don't get me wrong. It was just kind of, well, there you go.
More what I'm specifically meaning is like right out of the gate, there he is, and it's like in this first scene we see him, I could tell right away he's going to spit out like the first 3 lines he says are going to be one-liners.
Sure, yeah.
And I hate that because it's like that's a network trick. It's like this person's funny and here's why. Instead of just letting you watch him over the course of a few episodes, it's like you don't this whole season's on Netflix. You don't have to grab me in episode 1 to explain to me that he's likable. Like you can just let him be charming, which he is. Like you don't have to try that hard. And I guess that's all. It's a small nitpick, really.
I gotcha.
As for what's her name, Deborah something, Karen, I was very impressed with her performance because she has a lot on her plate emotionally, and her poor sinuses. I mean, half the show she was like crying or just like her face is just melting from all the stuff that's going on in her life, and it's tough to kind of keep that up as an actress. So I'm always impressed with someone who
can pull off a role
who can pull off 13 episodes of essentially being either incredibly sad or scared for your life or paranoid or distrusted or just all these different ranges of harrowing emotions. That's very difficult. So
and see, for me too, I agree with you. I think she kind of impressed me in that way. But I got to knock the writing on that in that they kind of just showed a lot of different facets of one or two emotions for her, as opposed to showing the range. In other words, there were very few, maybe like the last episode or so, where you get to see her smile and just kind of be happy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough. Like I felt like I should be feeling sorry for this character still for some reason. And I didn't understand. I don't know. I just felt like the writers could have provided a little bit of relief for her more than they did. I got to knock the writing for her, but her performance I thought was really, really fine. So the other sort of big character is Ben Urich, who was played by Vondie Curtis Hall.
Urich, yeah.
Urich, yes. I'll be honest with you on this one. Both the writing and the performance, I didn't care for. I feel like they could have told the same story without that character at all. Let us spend more time with the main cast of characters and get to know them better. And I felt too that maybe he took the role that Matt Murdock should have had, which is this: I'm going to stand beside Karen and help her discover things and help her detective things. And
he was incredibly supernaturally sneaky for a reporter too, wasn't he?
He was.
Remember at
he
the
was
auction?
Crazy, man.
He basically disappears from the auction.
He does. Just like he's Batman, essentially.
Yeah, he's
I don't know. I didn't care for the character. I tend to zone out whenever he's on screen. His subplot with his wife, I never bought. I never thought that was interesting at all. I felt like it was another grab at emotion by the writers that wasn't necessary because we had so much going on already. Yeah, I didn't care for that character.
I liked him.
I gotcha. I know most people do.
Yeah.
I just felt like he was, he never really did anything with Murdock, which was maybe part of the problem for me.
Yeah, I feel like he should have been more part of like the main character story, not a side character story.
Exactly.
He's like an assistant of an assistant,
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think the middle ground would have been give him and Murdock a lot more scenes, but I don't know if that was an attempt by them to just make it more believable that no one would figure out that Matt Murdock is Daredevil. I think they didn't want to even get close to tiptoeing that secret identity line in the first season. I think probably that was just them trying to play it safe, and just because again we're talking about the series in detail. So Ben Urich is killed, and I think maybe they looked down the road and thought, well, if Murdock is the guy working with him, that puts him in the crosshairs way too early in the series.
Sure.
And we don't want to find a way to write out of that right now or something.
Right. It's true.
Is it time to talk about Fisk?
I guess it is.
Okay.
Who they never called Kingpin.
Here's my thing with that character.
Okay.
I have a weird mix because I find his story, like psychologically, like the whole episode about him as a kid and like his mom and his dad, I was like, man, this is bad. And then how that episode ends with, how him killing his father. It's like, wow, okay, I see that. And so that kind of explains his sort of loose bolt or whatever he's got up there. Vincent D'Onofrio is definitely well cast as a menacing presence.
Yeah.
I physically, like, I'd look at him and just go, I don't know what's up with this dude, but I don't want to know what's going on with him at all.
Yeah.
His voice was extremely difficult for me.
It was. Because it kept reminding me of the character he played on Men in Black. It really did. The guy on Men in Black was like, more water. That's exactly what Fisk was in this. Vanessa, we have to go to the grocery store.
Where are all these cockroaches coming from? The kitchen.
Don't pay attention to the cockroaches.
Yeah, but if you listen to Vincent D'Onofrio actually talk, he doesn't sound like me, but I mean, it's more in my vocal range. He's like a normal dude. The whole time he's talking and it's broken and I want this city to be better. It can be better. And I'm like, okay, if you could actually hit some sort of like deep voiced Rubicon where you sound like a different person, then that's fine. But you don't sound like a different person. You sound like you trying to make your voice deeper and not succeeding. Like you sound like you're straining yourself. And
it's true.
I thought it was kind of a poor choice. Wilson Fisk is not like this. I know he comes from like a working class family and blah blah blah. But as an adult, as a character, and as like this mogul, and you see his apartment and his suits and how clean and the music he listens to, like he's very refined and upscale. I don't think it's necessary. I thought it was a poor character choice for an actor who doesn't have a naturally deep voice to try and deepen it to make him more menacing. Yeah. Like a garbage man should sound like that. Maybe, but a guy like Wilson Fisk, who's wealthy and cultured and educated, it's okay if he sounds more like me and well-spoken and calmer, because then when he smashes the dude's head in a door and it falls off his body, then you're like, oh my God.
Yeah,
like,
it's true.
It was unnecessary. It was a risk that didn't have to be taken.
It's true.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's
just,
like,
and I hadn't thought about it till you brought it up, but that character was based on the actor Sidney Greenstreet when they were drawing Kingpin. It was based on Sidney Greenstreet, and Sidney Greenstreet did not have a deep voice at all. He was like, hello there. Obviously, I think Wilson Fisk shouldn't have a voice like, hello, Humphrey Bogart. I'm Sidney Greenstreet.
Like in the movie when he's played by Michael Clark Duncan. Michael Clark Duncan has a deep voice.
He does.
Now, people had a problem with him as the Kingpin. One of those problems was not, I hate how deep his voice is, because that's Michael Clark. It's okay for him to sound like that if that's how you sound. Exactly. But if you sound like me, don't try to dive down into this gravelly, subfloor of a voice, because it's not going to work. If that's not your natural speaking voice, and it's not essential to telling us who Wilson Fisk is.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that for me, Vincent D'Onofrio did a fine job. I mean, like you said, he looks the part. He's menacing. All of this great stuff. His halting way of speaking was distracting to me, more so than trying to do a deep voice or anything. It was just that it's so easy to impersonate. It's so easy to, it just comes across as fake. It doesn't seem believable. It's like he's trying to do something, or
it's like being drunk. And you're in the back of a cab, and the driver keeps going, and then slamming on the brake, and slam on the brake. You're just like, oh, stop, please, I have a headache. I just want to go home. And he just stops and starts the car for no reason.
Right.
That's what his voice is like.
For me, the main thing is the writing, again, for this character, I think was weak. And here's why. I agree with you that the episode where it shows his childhood, great episode. Yeah. Great stuff. I thought the first time that we see him, he's buying a painting and trying to impress Vanessa. And I thought that was such a very clever way to start this character, because we've heard about him, and then now when we see him, he's like not good with women. He's trying to impress her.
You're kind of on his side.
Do what?
I was on his side. I was like, oh, he doesn't seem so bad. He's trying to buy this painting.
Exactly. I was too. And I thought that was so clever because to start a character with like, here's something they're not good at. You know, the first time that you see them, I think is so useful to get the audience to boom relate or get the audience to boom sympathize or say this person is a human being, not just this supremely intelligent, you know, gangster.
And it's redundant to do anything other than that, because if you spend a couple episodes where you don't even see him and they're like, oh, we don't even say his name, he's so bad. If in the first time you see him, he's like torturing a guy.
Yeah.
How does that serve the story? It's redundant.
You're right. Here's my problem with it, though. Throughout the course of the series, I couldn't shake the notion that he's really childish, temperamental in a childish way, and sensitive in a childish way. And I've never thought of the Kingpin in that way. To me, the Kingpin is the best of the best gangsters, right? He's untouchable, he's proactive, and very, very smart. So you're not going to catch him very easy. But throughout this series, his own villain is not Daredevil. His villain is himself. He keeps getting in his own way. He keeps destroying his own chances at getting away with everything. And to me, that's not a way to write a smart villain. So now I'm wondering, what is so important about this character? Why do I need to know what he is or how he is? And because if he's not smart and he's not incredibly, you know, manipulative or clever with money or whatever it is, what is it that I need to be understanding about him? And the only thing that I can think of is that he's violent. But that doesn't really set him apart from the other villains on the show, because they're all violent. It's just, I guess, if we have to look for something unique to Wilson Fisk, it's that he's violent in a temperamental, childish way that lessened the intimidation factor of him. And I felt like they misunderstood the character at the end when Daredevil and Wilson Fisk are in an alley fighting. Now, we've seen Daredevil, we've seen Murdock fight many people. We know his abilities. But with Kingpin, we've not seen him really fight anybody. We've seen him kill a couple people, the decapitation and then Ben Urich. We've seen that, but we have not seen his abilities as a fighter. So to have him go up physically against Daredevil, I thought was a fundamental sort of misunderstanding of the character.
Yeah.
In this world. Now, in the comics world, that makes sense, because I believe in the comics world, they almost give him a supernatural, like they say all of that's not fat, it's muscle, and so he can like withstand like blades and whatnot. Like, so he's almost like a superhero himself, or you know, a supervillain. In that way, the physical fight would make sense. But in this way, I didn't feel like there was any physicality to his character other than just, if you're not good at fighting, I'll kill you. But if you are, I'm not really going to be able to do much. I felt like the confrontation between those two characters instead in this world should have been a mental game, building up Murdock's sort of detective abilities or his lawyer-isms and fighting him mentally. How do I get this man behind bars? And I understand that that's not as exciting as watching Daredevil beat the crap out of a fat guy, but I'm just saying, like, for me, I didn't know what they were trying to tell me with Wilson Fisk's character. They told me for so long that he was bad, you know, he's forced to be reckoned with. And then when I see him, he seems childish. And then when I hear him, he sort of loses the intimidation that his physical presence has. And then throughout the course of the series, he gets in his own way and proves to be kind of distracted and not very determined to succeed. I just didn't know what they were trying to tell me with his character. I felt like the writers were just at odds with themselves. Like, a few of them wanted him to be the physical threat, and a few of them wanted him to be, you know, super evil, and a few of them wanted to be really sympathetic, and it was just never cohesive enough for me.
Yeah, I think so, because he was kind of all over the place throughout the whole season. I personally, I love the movie Lethal Weapon, and I love the end fight scene, you know, Riggs fighting, you know, Gary Busey in the rain, you know. But one of the things I hate about that scene is that they caught him, they've got him, and the cops decide to let Riggs fight him like hand to hand instead of just, you know, cuffing him and you know, and everything else. So I hate it when he's running and he catches Daredevil and he decides, instead of running, I'm just going to go, hey, fuck it, and I'm going to fight Daredevil with my bare hands instead of continuing to try to get away. It could be argued I'm not going to be able to run from Daredevil. Yeah. Maybe try. I don't know. Sure. It was weird to me that that a character like this would have the lack of focus to stop his goal and suddenly decide that now is the time to put Daredevil on the ground, you know, while he's being pursued by police. So,
I know. Every time we review a TV show, I compare it to Breaking Bad. Think about the game of chess that seasons 3 and 4 were between Walt and Gus. It was very much like, and then in season 4, it kept getting like amped up, right? That Gus keeps winning. Gus is ahead by a long shot. So finally, what Walt has to do is appeal to Gus's weakness in order to beat him. And manipulate him in that way. It showed that the writers not only understood that character, but understood how to make another character understand that character.
Yeah.
So that he could win. In this, I never felt like Daredevil or that Murdock really understood where Fisk was coming from or what his plan was. I didn't even really know what his plan was.
I mean, they really could. One of the things that they bring up, but they never really delve into, is the fact that the two of them are almost the same in a way. Like, they both want Hell's Kitchen to be better. At least Murdock's goal about how to do that is clear. Well, he would like the criminal element gone from Hell's Kitchen. Fisk is still... I'm still unclear about how he plans to make it better. I mean, he seems to like want to build up businesses, but he cuts corners and, you know, buys off police and stuff, which in turn allows crime. So how can you not see that as someone who wants Hell's Kitchen to be better? You know, it's just...
Yeah. I'm unsure what his plan was.
I was unclear about the means
if he had succeeded, what would have happened.
It's as if I feel like that was a very Damon Lindelof thing to do, which is like poor guy gets.
I know, right?
I picture the writers, and they've taken the form of Damon Lindelof walking up to me and saying, "These characters are the same. They want the same thing." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's an interesting idea. How?" And he's like, "Well, Daredevil wants no more criminals. All right, what does Fisk want? Well, more criminals. All right, well, how does that make the city better?" And then he just short circuits and goes, because duality and synergy and
Man in Black.
And he just blows up. And so I'm like, well, wait, you haven't answered my question.
Right, exactly.
He's like saying, trust me, they're the same kind of. They won't tell me why or how.
Gotcha.
Anyway, that's Fisk.
Let me ask you this.
Yes,
I felt like all as its own piece, as its own series, it's very, very well done. We talked about the language of cinema that it uses. We talked about the tone. We talked about all this stuff that sets it apart. For me, then, to set it in the MCU, I feel like is a problem. I never once bought that this took place in the MCU. There were references to, Captain America. There were references to, the Battle of New York. There were these vague sort of like name dropping kind of things. But if you look at the MCU so far, including Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., all of these things have a very similar tone. And this feels so far out in left field by itself that I never was able to buy that it takes place in the same world. And it took me out every single time they threw in a reference. And then the thought now of Charlie Cox one day teaming up with the Avengers or having a scene with, say, Nick Fury or whatever seems so out of place that it's jarring to me. Did you have that same reaction of, I like this, I wish it was not a part of the MCU? Or were you able to buy it as just another look at the MCU that we haven't gotten so far?
I saw it as the other side of the coin of the MCU.
Gotcha.
Most of the MCU is this bubbly, poppy kind of tone in a way. They established that the reason Hell's Kitchen is so bad is because that's the part of the city that was hit the hardest during the first Avengers movie, during the Battle of New York. That area of New York particularly suffered. And then just the destruction and everything just allowed the criminal element to just seed and spread. I don't know how crime... It seems like Hell's Kitchen was always like a poor part of New York, but they're blaming the Avengers for it. I don't know. I think that was too... I think that was both... I think that the people who made the show from the outset, and as you know, they're not wrong, wanted to first make a good Daredevil show. Yeah. And one of the ways they were able to get it made was Marvel said, okay, but we want it to be part of the universe. We want it to be part of the shared universe. That's what we want to do this too, but only this way. And so it was kind of this deal with the devil, to get it made. Which I'm not implying bad intentions on anyone's part, but I think that was that's Marvel wants one thing and they want a good show. But I think that these people are more just fans of Daredevil and wanted it more self-contained, maybe from the outset. That's just my speculation.
Sure.
Now, as it relates to the rest of the universe, I therefore was glad that because the tone is so different, that they didn't I mean, I did feel like they did reference it a good bit, but I didn't feel like it was part of the universe as much as the others, in that all the other Marvel properties are more caught up in the overall action of each other's stories than this is. This is simply like almost, because it's such a dark and gritty show, I feel like that's the show saying, yeah, well, that's all well and great for them, but if you look at where we're at, it's kind of shitty for us, because the aftermath of all their carelessness and blah, blah, blah has left us these deplorable conditions to live in and these unsavory characters to have to deal with. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
I wish they had dealt with that more. Like, I wish they had name dropped it more and said, like, had Fisk, talk to the about news networks. Like, the Avengers are the problem.
Yeah.
Because then it cements it into the universe rather than just like a casual name drop.
That's
and it
true.
Makes it. I was talking about this with my brother just yesterday, actually, about how if you look at the Batman vs Superman trailer, it looks like they're going to be taking on the idea of what does Superman's presence in our world mean? How does it affect people? And that's something that the MCU hasn't dealt with much, is how does knowing that there's an Iron Man and a Thor affect the average person? And if this was our chance to see that, then I wish we had seen it more. Does that make sense?
I know what you mean. I mean, especially with Civil War being so close, it would have been perfect for at least somebody. Yeah, especially while Fisk was grandstanding and going like, "Hey, I want to do this," and I want New York to be strong. Like, for him to go, these powered people aren't helping very much.
Right. Point to Avengers Tower and say that's the problem.
Look what they did to our city. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. They're tied into the universe in more of like a look how hard it is for some people sort of thing, and in that within that context, they could have blamed the Avengers.
I mean, I guess my problem is if we view the Marvel Cinematic Universe as episodic television. Iron Man is sort of the pilot episode, and everything springboards off from that. This is not a slight to the show necessarily. It's a slight to, I guess, maybe the overall universe, is that this felt like filler episode. This felt like those episodes in the TV seasons where you're like, ugh, okay, fine. Clearly, either the writers just need a break or they wanted to try something new or something. Every show has those moments where you're like, this is a filler episode. I can tell. This isn't really going to have anything to do with anything. This is just a fun one. Because, I don't know, the whole cast breaks out in a musical or the whole thing's a dream or whatever. It's just one of those filler episodes. And to me, if this is connected, then the Daredevil show is a filler episode. And to me, even though
it feels the least connected to the whole
feels
thing.
The least connected. And even though it takes place in New York and Guardians of the Galaxy is all over the place, Guardians of the Galaxy feels like it impacts the Marvel Cinematic Universe more than Daredevil does. Because while Daredevil may be impacted by the Marvel Cinematic Universe, nothing that happens in this show is going to impact the movies.
Let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people, and maybe this could be aversion therapy on the writer's part, I feel like a lot of people were critical, not unjustly necessarily, about particularly the Phase 1 films and the Marvel films in general, about being too intertwined with each other's stories in a way that they feel just like setups.
Sure.
My answer to that is always, well, they're connected, so they have to have some things set up, and they do have to sort of tease it because, they do want you to keep watching, and it's relevant to other stories. But you have some people going, well, I want just a self-contained thing. I feel like some people would look at this show and say, see, here's a good example. Daredevil didn't pander to the Marvel audience and bow to the integration pressure or whatever of the studio, and it was just its own thing. My argument to that is, especially in the context of this discussion, is you're asking the shows to be something that they aren't. You want all this Marvel stuff to be self-contained, and it's not gonna be, because and you should all know that by now, because it's all together. Or do you see it sort of as what would you say to the people who would rather be self-contained? Would you say that it's, well, too bad? I mean, watch something else, basically?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think that, my opinion is the MCU is simultaneously the best and worst thing to ever happen to superhero films. I think that to the people that want this to be self-contained, great, fine, it kind of already is. But the problem with that is you'll never be able to, if you want it self-contained, you cannot ever have Daredevil team up with Tony Stark.
Anybody. Yeah.
It's never going to happen. In the comics, Daredevil and Black Widow had a big relationship for a long time. Should these two characters cross over and you want Daredevil self-contained, that cannot happen.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if this show is too connected, you're going to have people who are saying you're disparaging the story as is. Maybe my biggest problem with this show is the story already. So the self-contained style didn't work either. It's like I just said, right? The story source springboards off of the destruction of New York, the Battle of New York. But this doesn't spring back into it. It's a filler episode. It's an offshoot. It doesn't matter. I'm not 100% sure how to answer the question other than just to say that if you want to view this as self-contained, it's probably not going to be that hard to do that. If you want to view it as a part of it, it's also not hard to do that, because they do drop references. You know that this comes from that. But at the same time, to me, it's not a matter of how many references. It's a matter of how deep do the references go? What are the thematic things that we're pulling from? How are we infusing this shared timeline into what we're writing? So if Fisk had specifically taken on Avengers Tower or the Avengers or integrated that more into what we're seeing, I wouldn't have a problem with it, because it's a matter of how that's being done, not how many times it's being done. Does that make sense? I don't have a problem with things being a part of the universe, as long as they feel like a part of the universe. And to me, both tonally and just in its story and theme, I don't feel like it is a part. I feel like it is disconnected. And maybe the case in point of that is I like to look at this sometimes through the eyes of the target demographic. The target demographic of the MCU movies is very different from the target demographic of the DC films that are coming up. The MCU films are specifically made so as to attract children and adults. So let's look at it from a 10-year-old child's point of view. A 10-year-old kid is probably not going to be allowed to watch Daredevil. So for me, if your tone is that off, if the levels of maturity are that disparate, then you're doing something wrong, because you have to build a story in such a way that this doesn't feel like filler, and that it integrates well into, or that it's necessary to watch in order to continue watching the films. But you can't have an 8-year-old boy watching Avengers and then watch Daredevil, because it's too much for an 8-year-old boy. It doesn't make sense. And what is appropriate in Avengers is inappropriate for him here. It feels so different. It feels so strangely like off course. Two things have happened. One, it is not affecting the films at large. And two, it's not really using its ability to be affected by the films at large. I guess for me, that was my problem with it. I don't know.
So your thing is more like it's taking up space in the MCU without actually having any kind of ripple effect on the other things.
Exactly. And I think I talked about this a bit in Age of Ultron, that my favorite of the MCU movies is Winter Soldier, because that has such a ripple effect coming off of it. Whereas something like Guardians of the Galaxy, not much. there's not much that's, I mean, sure, we learn a little bit about the Infinity Stones and see Thanos for a second, but there's not much ripple.
Yeah, it's largely, yeah, I had the same problem with Guardians.
So this has even less ripple than Guardians. So why was I asked to view it as a part of the MCU? That's where I'm coming from. So as much artistic integrity as this show has and creative integrity as a self-contained world, it loses that when viewed as part of the MCU, because then it feels like filler. Like I said, I can't really even imagine a world, because visually the Daredevil costume at the end is so different than, say, the Iron Man costume or even the Captain America costume, that to have the two of them standing next to each other, I think would look weird. Not to mention be tonally weird. What if Captain America, the guy who in the Avengers says, "Watch your language," what if he teams up with Daredevil? That's so tonally off that I can't view it as canon. I can't view it in my mind as being something that can ever happen.
I think that was my biggest concern going into the first Avengers film was, are they going to match tone correctly? Are they going to is their interaction going to be believable?
Right.
And so for you, this is the first indicator of, I don't see how this would work with the characters we already know.
Right. And I don't think that it can. Now, I could be wrong. They could pull off some kind of crazy thing in Infinity Wars or something, and boom, Charlie Cox is there. But I just think that it's so off. I have so many mixed feelings about it. And that's why I say the MCU is one of the worst things to happen, because it makes things like this difficult. What should just be a fun, good little thing, now it forces me to compare it. And if you compare the tone between Guardians of the Galaxy and Daredevil, it is night and day. And how those two could stand together. Could we ever have a movie where Daredevil is in the same movie as Groot or Rocket Raccoon? You're asking me to think that that's going to happen. I mean, I just can't see that. That one day, Ronan's going to be in prison with Wilson Fisk. It just seems off to me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's a valid concern. Well, do you have any closing thoughts?
It's a very fun ride. I can't shake the feeling that it feels a little fillerish, just because of its place in the MCU. Again, the story's a little weak in that it's a story about a vigilante trying to beat up organized crime. We've seen that a lot, and this doesn't really add anything new to that mix.
Agreed.
Other than the hero being blind, there's not really anything new that is offered by this compared to something like, say, or Arrow. Let's look at Arrow. The first season of Arrow was Arrow versus organized crime. This doesn't really do anything different than Arrow did. And so for that reason, I can't really give it originality points. But look, if you like the character of Daredevil, you will like this. It's very faithful to that. It's very true to what you've grown to love about that character. You'll have to get through a couple of actors that are trying too hard. While I still probably enjoy Arrow and Flash more than Daredevil, Daredevil's more sophisticated in its use of cinematic tools. So for that, I've got to give it points. It does not feel like network television. It is very serialized. Each episode runs right into the next, and it fits really well. There's no, villain of the week kind of format to it, and you got to give it points for that. So look, it's a really good experiment. I think it worked really well by and large, and I think if you want something a little more mature from the Marvel Universe, this is where you're going to get it. I think that you'll like it if you give it a shot. Be warned that it does not do anything very important. It does not do anything very new. And it's not like if you missed this first season, you would be out of the loop for the MCU or really even just superhero genre in general. You've seen everything that this show provides before. So I'll give it probably out of 10. I'll probably give it a 6.5 or 7.
I liked it. I thought the fight choreography in particular was great. It reminded me a lot of like The Raid. Aside from everything else we talked about, I think once they get into the interconnectedness of the Defender stuff, which we got glimpses of, like this Madame Gao woman.
Yeah.
And where's she from? Where's she talking about when she says very far away? And she speaks all Earth's languages. Is she, is that some Iron Fist stuff? Is there some magic that's going to be happening in the other shows? And I think once we get into that, make it a little more interesting. It's kind of sad that I'm thinking once we get into the other properties, that'll elevate this property. I'm hoping that they were just trying to not completely stumble out of the gate with this show. So I'm hoping they were just playing everything safe. You've established this universe and character fairly well. I mean, okay. But now it's time to kind of dazzle us some and explain to us why we should care about this in the overall scheme. Again, it's great as a standalone kind of show, but if you're going to pitch it, if you take special interest to mention that it's part of the MCU, then explain to me why that's important.
Right. To
you telling your story.
I'd
still recommend it, of course. Just know all these things, I guess. If you listen to this, hopefully you have watched it already, and maybe you think the same thing. Maybe you disagree. I still think it's, for anyone who listened to this whole thing and has not seen it, it's worth watching, but there are problems.
Yeah.
Now for housekeeping, if you enjoyed this episode, keep watching, keep listening. We're going to be on a lot of platforms for a little while until we figure out which ones work best. But if you have any comments or disagreements with us or tips or whatever you feel like saying, you can reach us by email at hoopercast@gmail.com. Again, if you're not listening to this on iTunes, you can find us on iTunes, just search HooperCast, or you can follow us on Podbean, hoopercastpod.podbean.com. We're on YouTube, account as HooperCastPod. We're also on Blogger still, hoopercastpod.blogspot.com. We're on Tumblr as well, hoopercastpod.tumblr.com. We're on Twitter at HooperCast. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/HooperCast. God, this is exhausting. Right? On the Tumblr and Blogger pages, we have a PayPal button if you want to donate to the podcast. We're not going to use your money for anything other than, either paying for hosting or possibly new equipment if we even got that much money. But right now, we're grateful for anything you want to send our way, if at all. Of course, if you don't enjoy the podcast, then we understand if you don't donate. But if you like what you hear and you want to keep listening, then maybe give us a few more episodes and decide if you want to donate any amount at all. There's a button on Tumblr and a button on Blogger to donate to our PayPal account. But yeah, anyway, like we said, to new listeners, we hope you enjoy the show. We hope you keep listening. They're not all this long, by the way. Dustin and I tend to do longer episodes if we're talking about something like this that has a lot of, as we say,
content.
Yeah, a lot of content, a lot of ripple effects into other things we might talk about in the future. On TV, there's like the normal format, and then there's like a special. So I consider these and the Avengers review like very special HooperCast episode. When Dustin and I typically record, it's a lot more, not formatted, but it's shorter. It just tends to be more of what we've been watching and maybe a couple of special topics of the week. Sure. In general, we tend to keep it shorter than this. So if the length is kind of freaking you out, then don't worry. They're not all an hour long.
And if all you've heard is the Avengers one and this one, I promise I'm not always a buzzkill about these Marvel movies.
Dustin has been very, very negative.
I'm sorry.
No, but if you go back, and that's another thing. If you want to listen to previous episodes of the show, I'm not going to put those on Podbean because I don't think they're going to air them in order. So I'd rather you just go to the YouTube page and find them there. I think they go back. I mean, this is our 77th episode. I think we go all the way back to like the
40s or so.
I think it's even sooner than that because that very popular Final Destination one's on there, and that's like 15.
Oh yeah.
So most of them are on there. The ones if some are missing, don't worry, they're not worth listening to anyway. That's back when it was just me and I had a worse mic and worse opinions. So that's before Dustin jumped on the scene and elevated this into an actual show.
Well, if by elevate you mean play devil's advocate as to why everything sucks. Hooper's like, especially with these Marvel ones, it seems like the last two, Hooper's been like, I like this. And then I'm like, here's why it sucks.
And I'm yes, but some people like it. And you're like, yeah, but not me.
But not me. I'm too good for this.
Yeah. No, Dustin tends to be a lot more honest about when something doesn't work, and that's half the reason I look forward to recording these, is because it gives me perspective, because I tend to be starry-eyed when it comes to the Marvel stuff. So,
well, I mean, when it works for you, it works for you. And sometimes things don't work for me.
If you like the movies, to watch the movies, but keep me out of it. Anyway, thanks for listening, you guys. If you like us, then subscribe. Give us a good rating. Go to our Facebook page. Send us questions. Interact with us. That's what we want the most, is interaction with you guys, because we want to know who we're reaching and what you guys think. And we want your opinions too. You don't have to just listen to us talk. You can give us your opinions, and I'll read your emails on the show. I'll share your comments. If you have anything to say, tell us. And one last thing before we get out of here. We're also toying with the idea of doing live podcasts on Periscope. Dustin and I record this over Skype, if that hasn't been obvious to you from listening. We'd still like to do a live podcast episode. It's a little hard to coordinate. I'm not quite sure how it would work yet, because some people just stumble onto those feeds and they would have no idea what we're talking about. But we'd like to do it because that's another way to interact with you guys. So if you want to see us do that, then again, email us or whatever. We might do one this week, but we want to do one soon just to even try it out. So anyway, that's it, you guys. Thanks for listening, and be sure to look for more of these in the future, hopefully weekly, unless something important comes up. So, yeah.
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 All right, Dustin.
All right, Hooper.
All right, see you later.
Bye.